started my company 6 years ago, I was in a lot of leadership positions. But before being in leadership positions, I was in positions where other people were telling me what to do. So I've run the gamut of experience in technology. So to some extent, you already know how to delegate. Otherwise, you would not have the positions you have. Otherwise, you would not be here today. So I'm not going to tell you things you already know. I hope to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned, that I've lived through, that I've shared with my clients, that I've done when I was leading people and when I was managing large teams as well as small teams, and things that have worked for clients of different sizes that I have. So this is one of the companies that I worked with. This was back in Dallas, and I'm just here to share with you what works. So we're going to play a little trivia. Who here knows a control freak? Okay. Who's willing to admit that you're a control freak? Okay. I suspected there might be some of us here. And typically somebody would say that's like a character defect. But is there a way to put that to good use in a way that can empower the people that you work with, the people that you lead, or the people that you influence? So there are some signs to let you know if you're not properly delegating. If people are not coming to you anymore with problems, they're not coming to you anymore with suggestions because they think you have a deaf ear, that's a sign that maybe you're not delegating enough. You already know how to delegate the grunt work, but that's not enough. You know, those are things you already know how to do, and you're thinking you're using the 80-20 principle, and you're only retaining the 20% of the work that you're best at. And to a certain amount, to a certain degree, that will work, but you need to go well beyond that. So in order for you to delegate, who are you going to delegate to? You already have different levels of managers reporting to you. And those people, they want to feel that they're earning their keep. They want to properly manage what you're giving them. But if you don't empower them to also delegate, who are you going to delegate to? And in order to delegate something and for somebody to want to take it on and to do it justice, you need to incentivize them. You can't simply say, oh, here, I'm throwing this whole bunch of work on you just because I don't feel like doing it. You don't want to do that. You want to incentivize people. You want to make it an attractive offer, right? Why do you work the places that you work? They made you an attractive offer. So it's the same way. It's not about ditching stuff you don't want to do or don't like to do, but how is this going to benefit the next person? And when you're able to do that, they're going to feel free to delegate to other people also, both the things that they don't like to do as well as other things that they are great at doing it, but then other people could benefit from learning from that situation. What I have found oftentimes in my consulting practice is that leaders are not always willing to make the changes that they quote unquote should be making. And the reason for that is there's a secret fear about, well, if I stop doing it, I was the superstar in doing this before, how am I going to matter anymore? Of course, nobody actually says that. It comes out in different ways. Oh, we need to have a meeting about it. Let's talk about that next month. So-and-so needs to weigh in on that. So it's really important to remember, hey, you are already a leader. Your position is secure. Maybe the position of people lower down than you, not as secure. So there's a way to kind of tailor that to be able to help people to navigate those channels themselves. I want to tell you a story which is something which helped me greatly in my career. I worked for a guy who gave me a great opportunity. We were a startup. We barely had 30 people. And we lost some of our top talent. And therefore, the people who knew how to create one of our products that was bringing in not a lot of revenue at the time, but for us, it was a lot of revenue. And in one meeting, we were discussing whether or not we should ditch it or should we try to keep it going or what should we do with it. So at the end of the day, I finally got up the courage to go to my boss and say, I think we can reverse engineer this. And I gave him some ideas in terms of what I knew, what other people knew, and how we could get together to kind of reverse engineer it, because I knew the product from a certain angle, other people knew the product from different angles, and I figure if we get together, we'll probably be able to do it. Not only did we accomplish that, we also made it much better, to the point that someone sent in flowers to the office because we had given them something that they really needed for their customers, and we were able to save the day. But how do you make something happen? And what he said to me was, actually, you know what? Nobody came to me about this. You're the only person who came to me with an idea. And he said, go make it so. And many times after that, when I would come to him with ideas, he said, go make it so. So I vowed that when I would be in a position, leadership position also, that I would likewise do the same thing. Empower people to do something and be able to step back and allow them to be able to thrive, to succeed, to have a platform to also shine. So it's not always easy to make a clean break. One of our speakers earlier today, Juan Pablo, we were at dinner last night that Colin from Carrot had sponsored, and one of the things we talked about was how he delegated something, and once he fully stepped out, it crashed. It was a disaster. That can happen, but you need to let people learn how to depend on their own best judgment. You can be there to help them, but not to rescue them. It's a concept that I call stretch, don't break. You want to stretch people, but not to the point where you're breaking them, where you're breaking their initiative, where you're breaking their sense of ownership for what they're trying to accomplish. But they have to be able to do that. Sometimes it's difficult to hand over something to someone because people are used to getting certain kinds of results from you because you're the person who owns that particular deliverable. And you're thinking, unless they meet the same level of outcome, then it's not good enough because it's your reputation on the line. As long as you were doing it, it was impressive, it pleased the stakeholders, but now that someone else is doing it, you know, is it up to par? So the way to think about that I would invite you to think about it, is that this used to be your baby. You made your name doing that already. Now it's someone else's turn. You started building your own legacy. It's okay to now provide a platform for other people to build a legacy also. And, you know, start to detach from that a little bit and allow other people to fail, allow them to have their own results. And you know something, it's not necessarily a reflection on you. Now it's something that they have to own it to the point where they realize it's a reflection on them. It's not something so much that they're doing to help you. Now it's something that they're using to build a legacy. And that's what I talked about before when I talked about incentivizing people to take something on. It's not simply delegating it, do the best you can, and then run away. But how do you know they're going to have the same level of ownership in it? And like I said before, it's easy to delegate the grunt work. It's easy to delegate the things you don't like to do anyway. But there are probably some things that are near and dear to your heart that you don't want to let go of. How many of you go to executive meetings? Everybody in here. I would invite you to think about doing this in the next week, month. Next time you go to an executive meeting, take someone with you who doesn't typically go to executive meetings. Why? They will learn a lot. They will learn how to carry themselves. They will learn how to properly represent your team. Depending on the culture of your company, it can be very woke, very conscious, very whatever, but you might work in a tough environment where you really need to have a tough skin, where you really have to watch your back and what you say and how you say it. So you need to teach these people, when you go into these important meetings, here's how you're supposed to act. We've all been to school. When a teacher stands in front of the classroom and they ask a question, what are you supposed to do as a student? Raise your hand, give the answer. And as technical people, we tend to have a lot of the answers. Instead, what we need to do now is tell people, one of the protocols that you might need to teach people is when to shut up in a meeting. That's a skill. just because you're smart, just because you know the answer, doesn't mean that it is your place to open your mouth at that particular time to answer the question. Why? You could make somebody look bad. You could catch a bullet for another team. These are things that I've personally experienced. So when I would start sending people in meetings to represent me, I told them, here are your limits. Here's the scope of what you're allowed to talk about. Here are things you need to stay away from. This particular thing has nothing to do with our team, so be quiet about that. If you're not in infrastructure and a server went down, but you know why the server went down, why are you opening about it? You don't own that team. Consequently, you might make that team look bad by opening your mouth. But you might also catch a bullet because if you knew what caused that server to go down, then why didn't you fix it? So you're taking on responsibility necessarily, which is not your place to take. So those finer things that you're not going to learn in any school, in any business school, in any technical school, in any boot camp, those are skills that you can give people who report to you so that you can enable them to represent you on a phone meeting, in front of customers, in front of stakeholders, in front of senior executives. So definitely once a month, take somebody with you to an executive meeting. And once a quarter, disappear from that meeting. Send someone for you. You need to train people to the point where they can replace you. And by doing that, it doesn't mean that you go away, you don't stop mattering, but you now enable people to do some of the higher level work that previously only you could do, and you were carrying the world on your shoulders, and you're not able to sleep, and your family's not seeing you because you're constantly trying to save the world, and it doesn't have to be like that. So another way you can delegate is by saving your firepower. All of you have expensive people working for you, whether you're private, whether you depend on VC capital, you have expensive people working for you. But you also have some people in your company who may be less expensive or less experienced. These people may not necessarily have had a tech background similar to your team, but these are people who have the capacity to take on work, to take on more work than they're currently doing. And instead of feeling entitled, these people can actually take on a lot of work. They're very coachable. They're very happy to do the work. They're a lot more conscious about the decisions that they're making as they take on that responsibility. So I want you to write down 3 things, the ABCs of figuring out who you can take on to delegate some of the work to. And that's something I've personally done. I selected someone who was not the next level down from me, but a couple levels down from me, and I assigned him some work. They're coachable, worked his butt off, didn't feel, and he felt grateful because he is not the usual suspect. Sometimes you need to shake people up and not necessarily go to the usual suspect with that responsibility. You get somebody who's actually going to work a little bit harder. So the first thing you want to do, A, avoid entitlement. That's what you get by not going to the usual suspects to get some work done. B, you bypass the bureaucracy. Now, you may have someone who's a business analyst, for example. They're not super technical, but they use technical tools. Are there some things that some of your lower level staff or some of your managers can delegate to someone like that? What's in it for that person? Because remember I said you want to incentivize it, even if it's not somebody who's your direct report. How do you make them want to do what you are asking them to do in a way that they'll be able to put their whole heart into it? So maybe you work in a company where you have 20 business analysts. By giving them this piece of work, by delegating this work to them, what they get is the opportunity to stand out among all of the business analysts. Of all of the business analysts, you'll be the only one who can do X, Y, Z. So that's what I'm talking about. You can't be all stiff about delegating work. You have to really think about what's going to make it appealing for that person. And C is that it's cost neutral. You don't necessarily have to go out and hire a whole other person to do that if you can find people who are motivated and humble enough to take on the work and put their heart into actually doing the work. So that's the ABCs. Avoid entitled people, bypass the bureaucracy, and make cost-neutral decisions. Now, some of you have small teams. Where are you? Okay, so you might have what I call IAGN syndrome. You're singing, I ain't got nobody. So where exactly are you going to find these other people who you're going to delegate to? Because you might have a small team and your budget might be constrained, right? So I don't want you crying like this Dawson Creek guy. There is something that one of the proprietary processes that I bring to my clients, I call the ESA formula. It's actually something that I started doing more than 10 years ago when I started leading people. And that's eliminate, streamline, and automate. And right here at this summit, we have an example of the ESA formula. Peter has deliberately eliminated people who are not like us, right? It's only people who are people leaders here in technology. Those are primarily the people who are here in this room. So likewise, are there things that you're doing that you can eliminate? Are there meetings that you can eliminate? We had somebody here earlier talking about how, from MongoDB, Elliot was talking about how to reduce the meeting time, or if you have to go up to an hour, go to an hour. But people don't come in feeling like they're wasting their time instead of doing something more productive. That's one way to do it. Streamline. Not everything requires a technical solution. We all gravitate towards automating things, but I hope I can say this, but I tell my clients, if you automate crap, it's still crap. So don't automate crap. Make your process a little bit better, and then you can automate. Now, automation, I prefer to do end-to-end automation, but there's never going to be a substitute for a thinking person, no matter how great your tools are, your tool set is. So you can use technology, but technology is there to support your goals. So if you have a small company all the way up to a big company, the ESA formula is really something that can help you. You eliminate, you streamline, you eliminate the busy work that people are caught doing, and when you start delegating to people and you make it attractive enough for them, all of a sudden, a lot of the things that they used to want to hold on to, what's going to happen? They're going to say, oh, this is busy work. I can let this go because I want this job. I want this opportunity. So all of a sudden, they'll start culling things away from their own processes that is holding them back from being able to take on this opportunity that you're offering to them. Also, I would invite you to orchestrate, don't frustrate. Like Ben Zander, the conductor, you're there to awaken possibilities in people. You're not there to necessarily tell them this is how you have to do it. If you're up here as a conductor, you can't be running around trying to do everybody else's jobs just to remind people how important you are. I'm sure most people in this room, they're not like that anyway. I know a lot of you. But you want to make sure that you teach people, you orchestrate, and you don't have to be in the details. Tell people what you expect. If your expectations aren't met, tell them they need to go back to the drawing board and let them continue to do their work. Also, I would invite you to not only look to your peer group, people in your company to give you advice, because if people had all the answers, we would not need events like this. There's somebody who posted on LinkedIn about having been in IT for 30 years, and he's still here today. Why? Because there's more he can learn. There's always more we can all learn. And there are limits to peer support. If you're in the same succession pipeline as someone else, how good is their advice? How long will they continue to help you? Because at one point, you're going to be competing for the same role. So there's a limit to that. So having an independent voice is something that can really help you. And then when you actually have that extra help, don't treat them like mercenaries. I know what Dimitri said earlier, that sometimes you have people, they can come in, they can rock and roll, and I can go into any organization and help them achieve a lot of things, but do those people care about your problems? Have they spent time, have they spent money trying to solve their problems themselves to be able to assist you? And I'd love to talk to you more. I've been talking to a lot of people since yesterday. Just don't call me Karen. Sometimes that gets butchered, so thank you. And my husband likes to say Karen with a smile, so if you smile, you'll pronounce my name correctly, Kareen. So I would love to talk to you more, and thank you so much for being here.